Hey everybody, One Fun Guy podcast. I'm coming back at you guys live again, and there's something that I wanted to discuss. I just had Diana on. She was a fantastic guest. That episode is going to be posted on YouTube as soon as I get done with this. But I wanted to talk about a few things right away, just to kind of clear the air about some stuff. I had Ryan, my friend, on last episode, and we talked about track and coaching and all the stuff that goes along with being a high school athletic coach. And I had some engagements from my other friends who are coaches, and they were like, oh, I'd love to talk about coaching as well on your podcast. Would you like to have me? And I said, sure. So I started thinking about certain things, right? And I just kind of want to address this. And anybody who has a podcast, if you come across something that happens when you're live on air, guys, I don't feel the need that it is cordial to correct somebody while you're doing that, right? So Ryan was on, and I got a bunch of, we laughed at it right afterwards. We kind of said, we caught the mistake. But Ryan said that I was a teak, right? A Tau Cap Epsilon. And then I was actually a Phi Cap. I was part of the Phi Kappa Sigma fraternity. However, when we were freshmen in school, you go to a bunch of fraternities, and Ryan was always a friend of mine. We met when we first started playing football. I was a freshman, he was a sophomore, and he recruited me hard, guys, right? For Tau Cap Epsilon, to the point where I was almost going to join, right? I had the two fraternities that I was a part of, the Phi Caps and the Teaks, right? They were like, where am I going to go? And a lot of my other friends were in the same boat, right? Who are we going to pledge with, right? So we lived on the floor. I lived on the Phi Cap floor, and the Teaks were in a different building, but we spent a lot of time in and around them, right? Coming and hanging out. And that's kind of what you do. When you rush a fraternity, you go to multitudes of fraternities. And I had a bunch of friends who were Teaks, and I had a bunch of friends who were Phi Caps, right? So I picked Phi Cap a Sigma, right? So I was a skull. But on the show, Ryan introduced me as a teak, right? So I post the video, and all of my friends now, right? All my fraternity brothers are like, what was that? Like, you're not a teak. I'm like, listen, I know. But you don't correct somebody when you're on the air. It's just not the cordial thing to do, right? You kind of just go with it. You accept the fact. You don't want to call anybody out. You don't want to be like, hey, start over, time out, let's rewind. You just go with it, right? That's kind of what you do in broadcasting, on television, and things like that. You just go with it, and then you address it later. And I just want to say, I thanked Ryan for doing that, because it was kind of the first time where I was ever in that position, right? He said something, and I was like, yeah, I just rolled with it, right? I didn't stop him. I didn't correct him. I didn't say, hey, wait. But so afterwards, he sends me a text, and he goes, I just realized I said you were a teak. And he's like, your fraternity brothers are going to kill me. And I was like, listen, it's no big deal. It's not the end of the world. Well, when I posted the video, several of my fraternity brothers were like, what was that about? And I was like, it was just an honest mistake. We went on with our podcast. I didn't want to rectify it. I didn't want to make him feel bad or put him on the spot. I just rolled with it, and then we addressed it afterwards, and we moved on. So I just want to kind of put that out there. If anybody is podcasting or talking on a live media platform where you're live and you can't adjust anything, just go with it, right? It's like the musician who trips on stage. They get up and they make it seem like it was part of the gig, right? Like they meant to do it, right? That's just what you do. You accept the mistake. You don't correct anybody. You don't, fix it, not live. Let the conversation flow. Let it go. Accept the fact that, something was said that might have not been true, or might have been just an error, but don't call the person out on it, right? That makes it for the rest of a very awkward and weird podcast. My interview and my conversation with Ryan was awesome, right? Like, Ryan's been a friend of mine for a multitude of years. Like I said, a bunch of the fraternity guys that were teaks, that they were my friends as well. And it's not that we don't get along. We did a lot of stuff together. We were friends, and we hung out, we played ball together, all that kind of stuff. But I'm just saying, as somebody who might be watching this, saying, well, why didn't you say anything to him when he said it, right? Why didn't you stop him and correct him? And it was like, you just don't do that. It's not the civil thing to do. It's not the cordial thing to do. So I'm just addressing it now. I didn't want to, go out there and say, hey, listen, that this what shouldn't have been said, or this you just went with it, right? And it was all in good spirit. He didn't mean anything by it. It wasn't, to insult my fraternity brothers or insult the fraternity. It was just a cordial mistake, and we laughed about it afterwards. I said, don't worry about it. I was like, it's not that big of a deal. And it's not, right? You don't want to make somebody feel bad or put them on the spot in the middle of a conversation. You're just not going to do that. So I just wanted to take the time to address it now and just say, it's water under the bridge. I want actually Ryan to be a guest on my show again, because he wrote a book, and it's very, very good. And I just started reading it, and I'm kind of like happy that I could say a friend did this, right? That a friend wrote this book. And I asked him to give me a signed copy of it. He said he would. I want to put it on my bookshelf right here behind me. And I kind of want to post it up to, because a few of my friends have wrote books, guys that I've worked with in the past. Kenny's one of them. He wrote a book. He actually signed it for me. But it means something when one of my friends do something that is productive, right? That they are influential in something they've done to the community, whether it's a children's book or a book about a place or something that they've experienced or whatever. It's great, right? I want to show them that I support them. So Kenny's book is upstairs in my mantle. I really appreciate, what he did. I actually went to his book signing, and I went to when he talked at the library about his book and how he did it. And I'm really happy for Ryan, and I'm proud to say that he's a friend, and that, he wrote that book and he accomplished that. And I told him, get me a signed copy of it. But I just wanted to take the time just to address it on just kind of the short end of things on a video, that if you are doing something live and you're doing it with a friend or somebody, like, don't correct them, right? It's just not the right thing to do. Like I said, we laughed about it when we were done. He's like, I'm sorry I said it. He's like, I wasn't thinking right. He's like, but we kind of chuckled about it and moved on. But I would never in the middle of something say, hey, that's not, right. That didn't happen. It's just not me. It's not the right thing to do. It's not the cordial thing to do. So I'm just addressing it now, that if you ever do a podcast, or you're thinking about doing it, or you're in a position where you're going to do something live with somebody else and something happens that isn't the way that it was supposed to be, just let it go. Keep moving on, moving forward, and you can always rectify it and go back and fix it later. It's just not the right thing to do, because if you do correct somebody and you do say it, then if they don't like it or something happens or they're like, oh, and it just makes for an awkward rest of the stuff. So just let it fly, guys. That's all I can say. Again, Diana was a great guest tonight. She's a poet. She's a writer. She is a super incredibly talented person. That's not my forte, guys, right? I'm not a writer. I'm really not a reader unless I have to. If it's something that like I have to read or I have to write, I do. But I don't generally sit down and write things out, right? I write notes for my podcast. I write notes about the people I'm going to talk to. I write notes about the conversations, but I don't sit down and write a novel, right? That's just not me. But I am interested in how she got involved with that, because her work is very talented. She's a great poet, and she's a fantastic writer. So I was drawn to her and her talents that way. So again, guys, I try to have people of all walks of life on my podcast, and I like to learn about things that I don't know about, which poetry is definitely one of them, right? I've read a few poems in my day, and that's about it, right? You kind of got to read the Shakespeare in high school, and you kind of got to, do all the other stuff. Once you get through that, I've never picked up Shakespeare again, right? Edgar Allan Poe wrote poems and short stories. I've read a few of them, kind of just, never looked back. So I'm interested in getting to know what people are excited about and what their talents are. So with that being said, guys, I'm going to end this live. Thank you again for the love and support on the One Fun Guy podcast across all the platforms, guys. So here on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and on YouTube, One Fun Guy podcast. Please subscribe to my channel. If you could like, comment, and share, that would be fantastic. But at the very minimum, if you could just subscribe, it helps me out a lot. I'm trying to get to 500 followers, because once I get to 500, I feel I can get to 1,000 faster. And then that way I can start monetizing my podcast. And I want to monetize it. Again, I've said it before, and I'll just reiterate, but I want to monetize it to where I put the money back into my podcast, buying better equipment, better sound, better audio stuff, and just to make it a better experience for you guys. Eventually, I'd like to change my background. I'd like to get better lighting. I'd like to do all that. But, without having the funds to do that, I'm content with where I'm at now. I have a good setup, but it could always be better, right? We're always trying to grow, and we're always trying to better ourselves. So once I get to that point, I think it'll really start to take off. So I just really want to hit 1,000 quickly. and go from there. So with that being said, I hope everybody has a great weekend, that they have a safe weekend, and I will see you guys on Sunday with my buddy John. We're going to talk about sports, and we're going to talk about podcasting in the sports world. So that'll be fun. That'll be Sunday morning at 11 o'clock. You'll start to see the stuff now I'm going to post for, and we will do that. And then next week, I have another special guest, and then I'm working on something with another person about another podcast. And I also have my horror podcast coming up with some guests that I previously had on the One Fun Guy podcast. So a lot of stuff in the works, a lot of stuff going on. I'm super excited. Thank you guys for being a part of this, for being a part of the One Fun Guy podcast family. Thank you for all the love and support. I appreciate it, and I will see you guys soon.